The massive space station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a crystalline spider, its countless arms reaching out into the darkness of space. Ships from 1,000 different worlds docked at its ports every day, their crews submitting to the same rigid security protocols that had governed galactic trade for over 3 millennia. Every species, every vessel, every cargo manifest was scrutinized, scanned, and cleared through layers of bureaucracy that could take standard cycles to complete. Except for one species. Commander Zara 9 of the Altarian Security Force watched through the observation deck's transparent aluminum as another human vessel approached the station. The ship was unremarkable by galactic standards, a mid-range cargo hauler with outdated fusion drives and hull plating that had seen better centuries. What made it extraordinary was the green beacon flashing from its communications array, a signal that meant only one thing: immediate clearance granted. "There goes another one," muttered her deputy, Clicks, his forearms crossed in obvious frustration. The insectoid officer's mandibles clicked with irritation as he watched the human ship glide past the massive queue of other vessels waiting for inspection. 17 ships ahead of them, some waiting for 2 full cycles, and they just go through. Zara 9 said nothing, but her scaled hide rippled with the same frustration. In her 40 years of service, she had processed millions of arrivals. She had seen trade delegations from the mighty hegemony of worlds forced to wait days for clearance. She had watched scientific expeditions carrying cures for plague-ridden colonies sit in holding patterns while their documentation was verified line by line. Yet every human ship, regardless of size, purpose, or origin, received the same treatment: immediate, unquestioned passage. The standing orders were clear and had never been challenged. Any vessel broadcasting human identification codes was to be granted immediate docking privileges, bypassed through all security checkpoints, and allowed to conduct their business without interference. The orders came from the highest levels of the Galactic Trade Consortium, signed by the Council of 12 themselves, and carried a classification level that made even senior officials like Zara 9 uncomfortable. "Ma'am," called Technician Vor from his monitoring station. "We're receiving complaints again. The Zelanian embassy is asking why their medical supply shipment is being held while humans pass through freely. They're threatening to file another formal protest." Zara 9's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of deep thought among her people. The protests had been growing more frequent over the past few cycles. Trade partners were becoming increasingly vocal about what they saw as unfair treatment. Some species had even begun threatening to withdraw from Nexus Prime entirely, seeking alternative trade routes that didn't involve what they perceived as human favoritism. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humans were relatively new to the galactic stage. Their first contact with the greater galactic community had occurred less than 2 centuries ago, making them practically infants compared to civilizations that had been trading among the stars for tens of thousands of years. They controlled a modest handful of systems, their technology was respectable but not revolutionary, and their military, while competent, posed no threat to any of the major galactic powers. Yet they alone enjoyed this unprecedented privilege. "Pull up the records," Zara 9 instructed. "I want to see the original authorization codes again." Vor's fingers danced across his console, and the main display filled with official documentation. The orders were stamped with seals from every major galactic authority: the Trade Consortium, the Stellar Defense League, even the enigmatic Consortium of Advanced Civilizations. The date was significant; it coincided almost exactly with humanity's formal admission to the galactic community. What made the documentation even more unusual was its brevity. Most galactic treaties and trade agreements ran to thousands of pages, covering every conceivable scenario and contingency. This order was a single paragraph, written in the formal dialect of High Galactic that was reserved for only the most critical communications. By unanimous decree of the assembled powers, vessels bearing legitimate human identification shall be granted unrestricted passage through all controlled space. This order supersedes all existing security protocols and shall remain in effect indefinitely. No exceptions. No appeals. No modifications without full council authorization. That was it. No explanation, no justification, no context. Just an order that had reshaped galactic commerce and created a 2-tier system that privileged one species above all others. Clicks approached the display, studying the seals with his compound eyes. "I've never seen anything like this before," he said quietly. "Even the hegemony's trade agreements have more restrictions. It's as if they were afraid of something." The thought had occurred to Zara 9 as well. Fear was the only emotion that could explain such sweeping concessions. But what could the great powers of the galaxy possibly fear from a species that had barely learned to build faster than light drives? As if summoned by her thoughts, another human ship appeared on the sensors, this one broadcasting emergency codes. Captain Elena Vasquez had never expected to see Nexus Prime again, especially not under these circumstances. Her ship, the merchant vessel Terra's Pride, limped toward the massive space station with half her engines dead and her hull scarred by weapons fire. Behind her, somewhere in the black between stars, the raiders who had attacked her convoy were probably still hunting for survivors. Nexus Control, this is Terra's Pride requesting emergency docking, she transmitted, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders. We have wounded aboard and minimal life support remaining. The response came immediately, cutting through the usual communication protocols with startling efficiency. Terra's Pride, this is Nexus Control. You are cleared for immediate docking at Bay 7. Emergency medical teams are standing by. Elena's navigator, a young man named Chen whose left arm hung useless at his side, looked up from his station with surprise. That was fast. Usually takes hours to get emergency clearance here. Not for us, Elena replied, though she had often wondered why. Like most human spacers, she had grown accustomed to the preferential treatment they received at stations throughout galactic space. It was simply an accepted fact, like the laws of physics or the price of quantum fuel. Humans didn't wait in line. As Terra's Pride settled into the docking bay, Elena could see the assembled emergency teams through the viewport. What caught her attention wasn't the medical equipment or the efficiency of the response, it was the way the alien emergency workers moved. There was something in their posture, something she had seen before but never quite understood. They weren't just responding to an emergency, they were treating her ship with what could only be described as reverence. Dr. Kelleran, the station's chief medical officer, was among the first to board. The tall, crane-like alien moved with the characteristic grace of his species, but Elena noticed how he seemed to avoid direct eye contact with her. His four-fingered hands trembled slightly as he activated his medical scanner. How many injured? He asked in accented standard. 7 crew members, various degrees of trauma. My navigator has a broken arm, and Engineer Morrison has severe burns from the plasma conduit explosion. Elena paused, studying the doctor's nervous demeanor. Is something wrong, Doctor? You seem unsettled. Dr. Kelleran's head crest flattened against his skull, a sign of distress among his people. No, Captain. We will provide the best care possible for your crew. You have my word. As the medical teams worked, Elena found herself in the station's central hub, filling out the required incident reports. The process that should have taken hours was completed in minutes. Officials who would normally demand detailed testimony seemed eager to expedite her paperwork and send her on her way. It was Security Chief Zara 9 who finally approached her, the reptilian officer's movements cautious and respectful. Captain Vasquez, I hope your crew recovers quickly. If there's anything else the station can provide. Elena studied the security chief's expression. In her 20 years of interstellar commerce, she had developed a keen ability to read alien body language. Zara 9 was nervous, almost deferential. It was the same attitude Elena had encountered at dozens of stations across the galaxy, but she had never questioned it directly. Chief, can I ask you something? Elena said, setting down her data pad. Why do we get this treatment? I mean, I'm grateful for the help, but I've seen trade delegations from major worlds forced to wait weeks for clearance while human ships just walk in. Zara 9's scaled hide rippled, and her inner eyelids flickered rapidly. For a moment, Elena thought the security chief might not answer at all. You really don't know? Zara 9 asked finally. Know what? The security chief looked around the busy hub, then gestured for Elena to follow her to a quieter alcove. When they were alone, Zara 9's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The incident, she said simply. The Kepler station incident. Elena frowned. The name was vaguely familiar, something from her history courses back on Earth, but she couldn't place the specifics. I'm sorry, I don't. 137 years ago, Zara 9 continued, before humans were officially recognized by the galactic community. A human exploration vessel made emergency contact with Kepler Station, a major trade hub in the vegan sector. They were requesting aid for a medical emergency, something about a plague outbreak on one of their colony ships. The security chief paused, her eyes distant as she accessed her people's collective memory banks. The station commander at the time was a Vorthan named Credix Major. He was known for his strict adherence to protocol and his prejudices against newer species. When the human ship requested permission to dock, he denied it. He claimed they hadn't followed proper channels, hadn't provided adequate documentation. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What happened? The human captain, his name was Marcus Chen, tried to explain that they had sick and dying people aboard. Children, elderly, pregnant women. They needed medical supplies and treatment that their ship couldn't provide. Credix Major refused. He ordered them to leave the sector immediately or be fired upon. Zara 9's voice grew even quieter. Captain Chen tried to negotiate. He offered to submit to any security measures, to allow boarding parties, to provide any documentation they required. But Credix Major was adamant. No proper clearance meant no docking privileges. The human ship was turned away. And then? Elena asked, though part of her already dreaded the answer. They tried 6 other stations in the sector. All of them turned the humans away, following standard protocol for unrecognized species. By the time the human ship finally reached a station willing to help, it was too late. 347 people had died, including 86 children. The weight of those numbers settled on Elena like a physical force. She had heard stories about the early days of human space exploration, about the challenges and tragedies that had marked their expansion into the galaxy. But that's not the end of it, Zara 9 continued. When news of what happened reached Earth, the human government sent a formal complaint to the Galactic Trade Consortium. They demanded accountability, compensation, and guarantees that such treatment would never happen again. The major powers basically ignored it. After all, what could one small, technologically inferior species do about it? Zara 9's hide rippled again, this time with what Elena recognized as fear. They found out. Elena leaned forward, her attention completely focused on Zara 9. The security chief's next words would clearly explain something that had puzzled humanity for over a century. The response came 18 months later, Zara 9 continued, her voice barely audible in the alcove. At first, nobody paid attention to the reports. Small disruptions in remote sectors, a few missing patrol ships, some unexplained technical failures at frontier outposts. The kind of incidents that happen regularly in the outer systems. The reptilian officer paused, accessing deeper memory files that clearly disturbed her. Then, the pattern became clear. Every station, every ship, every official who had been involved in turning away that human vessel was experiencing difficulties. Critical system failures, navigation errors that sent ships into asteroid fields, life support malfunctions that couldn't be explained or repaired. Elena felt her mouth go dry. You're saying humans were responsible? Not exactly, Zara 9 replied. That's what made it so terrifying. There were no human ships in the affected areas, no evidence of direct sabotage, no communications intercepts suggesting a coordinated campaign. It was as if space itself had turned against those who had refused to help. She activated a holographic display from her wrist unit, showing a 3-dimensional map of the affected region. Red markers indicated incident locations, creating a web of destruction across several star systems. Kepler Station was the first major loss. Complete life support failure across all sections simultaneously. Backup systems that had functioned flawlessly for decades simply stopped working. The station commander, Credix Major, was found in his office, apparently having died of oxygen deprivation despite being in a section that should have had full atmospheric support. Elena studied the display, noting how the incidents formed a clear pattern radiating outward from Kepler Station. How many died? Across all incidents? Nearly 40,000 beings. Entire crews, station populations, even some planetary outposts that had been involved in the decision-making chain. Zara 9's hide had gone pale, a sign of deep distress among her people. The investigating teams couldn't find any conventional explanation. The technology simply failed in ways that shouldn't have been possible. What did the authorities do? At first, they tried to cover it up. Classified the incidents as unexplained technical failures and restricted access to the investigation reports. But word was getting out. Rumors spread through the spacer community about a human curse that followed anyone who mistreated their people. Zara 9 closed the holographic display and looked directly at Elena. Then came the breakthrough. A research team studying the incidents discovered something that changed everything. Do you know about quantum entanglement theory, Captain? Elena nodded. Basic principles. Particles that remain connected across vast distances, sharing states instantaneously. Exactly. What the researchers found was that every human ship, every human-built device, every piece of human technology contained quantum signatures that were different. Not just different from galactic standard, different in ways that suggested a fundamental divergence in how humans interact with the quantum substrate of reality itself. The implications began to dawn on Elena, though she struggled to fully grasp them. You're saying we're somehow connected to our technology on a quantum level? More than that. The evidence suggested that humans don't just build technology, they form quantum bonds with it. Every ship, every computer, every piece of equipment carries quantum echoes of its human creators and operators. And, when humans die, especially when they die as a result of preventable tragedy. Zara-9 paused, clearly struggling with the concepts herself. Those quantum echoes become hostile. They seek out the quantum signatures of those responsible and begin systematically causing failures in their technology. It's not sabotage in any conventional sense, it's reality itself rejecting the technological constructs used by those who caused human suffering. Elena sat back, overwhelmed by the revelation. It explained so much: the preferential treatment, the nervous deference she had seen in alien officials, the way regulations seemed to melt away in the presence of human ships. So the galaxy is afraid of us, she said slowly. Not because of our weapons or our military, but because our dead can apparently haunt alien technology. The official reports classified it as quantum resonance syndrome, Zara-9 confirmed. But, yes, that's essentially what it comes down to. After the Kepler station incidents, the major powers held emergency sessions. The evidence was undeniable: humans possessed a unique quantum relationship with technology that made them extraordinarily dangerous to cross. Elena thought about all the times she had docked at stations across the galaxy, how officials had hurried to accommodate her requests, how paperwork that should have taken days was processed in hours. She had always assumed it was some kind of political arrangement between Earth and the galactic powers. So the standing orders aren't about trade agreements or diplomatic courtesy, she realized. They're about preventing another quantum haunting. Exactly. The orders specify that under no circumstances should humans be denied aid, assistance, or passage through galactic space. The potential consequences of allowing humans to die due to bureaucratic negligence are considered too dangerous to risk. Zara-9 gestured toward the main hub, where Elena could see her crew members being treated by alien medical staff with extraordinary care and attention. Every official in the galaxy learns about the Kepler station incident during their training. We're taught to treat human requests as absolute priority, not out of respect or fear of your military, but because the alternative, dealing with technology that has been quantum cursed by human suffering, is considered a fate worse than death. Elena looked out at the bustling station, seeing it now with completely different eyes. Every alien who had ever deferred to her, every official who had expedited her paperwork, every customs agent who had waved her through without inspection, they hadn't been showing favor or political courtesy. They had been terrified. Does Earth know? She asked. Does the human government understand why we get this treatment? Zara-9's expression became unreadable. That, Captain, is a question I cannot answer. The classification levels surrounding this information extend far beyond my security clearance. What I can tell you is that the standing orders remain in effect, and they show no signs of being modified. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Captain, I hope your people understand the responsibility that comes with this knowledge. The galaxy has learned to fear you not because of what you might do, but because of what happens when you suffer. The journey back to Earth took Elena 3 weeks, but her mind never left the conversation with Security Chief Zara-9. She had requested copies of the official reports about the Kepler station incident, only to be told that such documents were classified at levels far above her clearance. However, she did manage to access some of the public incident reports from that period, and what she found both fascinated and disturbed her. The pattern was undeniable once she knew what to look for. Equipment failures, navigation errors, life support malfunctions, all affecting individuals and organizations that had been involved in the decision to turn away the human colony ship. What made it even more unsettling was the precision of it. The quantum haunting, as Zara-9 had called it, seemed to target only those directly responsible while leaving innocent bystanders unharmed. When Terra's Pride finally reached Earth's orbital traffic control, Elena experienced the familiar swift processing that all human ships enjoyed. But now she understood the nervous efficiency of the alien controllers who managed Earth's approach vectors. They weren't being courteous, they were being careful. Elena's first stop was the Interstellar Commerce Authority, where she requested a meeting with Director Sarah Chan, a descendant, she had learned, of the captain who had commanded the original colony ship during the Kepler station incident. The director's office overlooked the sprawling complex of Earth's primary spaceport, where ships from dozens of worlds docked daily under the same expedited protocols that had become standard throughout the galaxy. "You look troubled, Captain," Director Chen observed as Elena settled into the chair across from her desk. "I trust the incident with the raiders has been resolved?" "The immediate situation, yes. But I learned something at Nexus Prime that I think you need to hear." Elena recounted her conversation with Security Chief Zara 9, watching carefully as the director's expression shifted from polite attention to genuine concern. When Elena finished, Director Chen was quiet for a long moment. She moved to the window, gazing out at the busy spaceport below. "How much do you know about Earth's integration into the galactic community?" she asked finally. "The standard history. First contact, trade negotiations, gradual acceptance into the major commercial networks." "The official version," Chen agreed. But there were details left out of the public records. Details that only a handful of people in the Earth government have clearance to know. She returned to her desk and activated a high-security terminal, inputting authorization codes that Elena recognized as being several levels above her own clearance. "The truth is, Captain, we've known about the quantum resonance phenomenon for over a century. We've known that our technology forms unusual quantum bonds with its operators. We've known about what happens when those bonds are severed traumatically. And, yes, we've known that this is why the galactic powers treat us with such deference." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying that Earth has been deliberately using this as a form of leverage?" "Not deliberately, no. But we've been aware of the implications." Director Chen pulled up a series of classified files on her screen. "After the Kepler station incident, our scientists began studying the phenomenon intensively. What they discovered was that the quantum bonding isn't unique to humans, it's just more pronounced in our species than in any others they've encountered." She turned the screen so Elena could see the research data. Complex quantum equations and probability matrices filled the display, but Elena could understand enough to grasp the basic concepts. "Every species develops some level of quantum entanglement with their technology," Chen continued. "But, in most cases, the bonds are weak and dissipate quickly after death. Human bonds are not only stronger, they're persistent. Our quantum signatures remain active in our technology long after we're gone, and they retain what can only be described as emotional imprints." Elena studied the data, noting the stark differences between human quantum signatures and those of other species. So when humans die traumatically, especially as a result of preventable tragedy, those imprints become hostile. Exactly. And, the more unjust or preventable the death, the more aggressive the quantum haunting becomes. Our scientists theorize that it's an evolutionary adaptation, a way for our species to ensure that those who harm us face consequences even after we're no longer alive to seek justice ourselves. Elena felt the weight of this revelation settling on her shoulders. Does this mean that every time a human has been mistreated in galactic space, their technology has potentially become weaponized? Director Chen's expression grew somber. Not every time, but often enough to establish a clear pattern. The galactic powers have documented over 200 incidents over the past century, and a half were human deaths resulted in subsequent technological failures affecting those responsible. She called up another file, this one showing a timeline of incidents across the galaxy. Elena could see clusters of events following major diplomatic disputes, commercial conflicts, and instances where humans had been denied aid or assistance. The most significant incident occurred about 60 years ago, Chen explained. A human research vessel was conducting archaeological studies in the Andorian sector when they were attacked by pirates. The local authorities refused to investigate, claiming they lacked jurisdiction. 17 researchers died in the attack. Elena watched as the timeline showed what followed: massive systems failures across the entire Andorian defense network, navigation errors that led to the collision of two major warships, and the complete breakdown of the sector's communications grid. The economic damage ran into the trillions of credits, Chen continued. The Andorian government was forced to rebuild their entire technological infrastructure from scratch. The incident is still taught in their military academies as an example of the importance of maintaining good relations with Earth. Elena began to understand the true scope of humanity's position in the galaxy. So we're not just another species with convenient trade privileges. We're a species that the galactic powers are genuinely afraid to cross. And that fear has given us advantages that we might not otherwise have earned, Chen admitted. Our trade delegations negotiate from positions of strength that our actual economic or military power wouldn't normally justify. Our citizens receive protections and considerations that other species must fight for. Our ships travel through space under an umbrella of protection that exists not because we're beloved, but because we're dangerous to mistreat. Elena thought about all the times she had docked at alien stations, how officials had gone out of their way to accommodate her needs, how problems that should have taken days to resolve were handled in hours. She had always assumed it was efficiency or good customer service. The question, Director Chen said, leaning forward, is what we do with this knowledge. Earth's position in the galactic community is built on a foundation that most of our citizens don't even know exists. We enjoy privileges that come at the cost of being seen as potentially dangerous by every other species in the galaxy. Elena considered this carefully. Is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, if it prevents humans from being mistreated. Perhaps not. But it also means that our relationships with other species are based on fear rather than genuine respect or cooperation. And there's always the question of what happens if that fear ever outweighs the benefits of maintaining peaceful relations with us. Director Chen closed the classified files and looked directly at Elena. There are people in the Earth government who believe we should reveal the truth about the quantum resonance phenomenon. They argue that transparency would lead to better understanding and more genuine relationships with other species. But there are others who believe that our current advantages are too valuable to risk. Elena understood the dilemma. The galaxy's fear of human quantum haunting had given her species a privileged position that they might never achieve through conventional diplomatic or economic means. But it also meant that every interaction with alien species was tainted by an underlying current of fear and mistrust. What do you think, Captain? Chen asked. Should humanity continue to benefit from a fear we didn't deliberately create, or should we reveal the truth and risk losing the protection it provides? The question would haunt Elena for the rest of her journey home. 6 months after her conversation with Director Chen, Elena found herself aboard a human diplomatic vessel heading for the neutral space station Harmony Point. Earth had finally made its decision about the quantum resonance phenomenon, and Elena had volunteered to be part of the delegation that would announce it to the galaxy. The delegation was led by Ambassador Patricia Reyes, a veteran diplomat who had spent decades navigating the complex relationships between Earth and the major galactic powers. As their ship approached Harmony Point, Elena could see representatives from dozens of worlds gathered for what had been announced as a major policy address from the Human Federation. Nervous? Ambassador Reyes asked as they reviewed their presentation materials one final time. Elena considered the question carefully. Not nervous, exactly. More like, hopeful. For the first time in my career, I feel like we're about to have honest conversations with the galaxy. The decision had not been easy. The debate within Earth's government had raged for months, with security hawks arguing that revealing the truth about quantum resonance would eliminate humanity's protective advantages. But, ultimately, a coalition of diplomats, scientists, and ethicists had prevailed, arguing that relationships built on fear were ultimately unsustainable and potentially dangerous. As Elena walked through Harmony Point's corridors toward the main assembly hall, she noticed the familiar signs of deference from alien staff and officials. Doorways that opened instantly, security checkpoints that waved her through without scanning, service personnel who practically stumbled over themselves to ensure her comfort. In a few hours, all of that might change forever. The assembly hall was packed. Elena recognized delegates from the Altarian security force, including Commander Zara 9, who gave her a subtle nod of acknowledgement. Representatives from the Trade Consortium, the Stellar Defense League, and dozens of individual worlds filled the tiered seating arrangement, all clearly curious about what humanity had to announce. Ambassador Reyes took the podium with the calm confidence that had made her one of Earth's most respected diplomats. She began with the standard diplomatic pleasantries, but Elena could sense the tension in the room. Everyone knew this wasn't a routine trade announcement or policy update. Honored delegates, Reyes began, humanity comes before you today not to request favors or negotiate treaties, but to share a truth that we believe you deserve to know. For over a century, human vessels and citizens have enjoyed certain privileges in galactic space that may have seemed arbitrary or politically motivated. Today, we will explain the real reason for this treatment. Elena watched as the various delegates leaned forward, their attention completely focused. Many had clearly suspected that there was more to humanity's status than official explanations suggested. 137 years ago, a human colony ship carrying 347 souls was denied aid at multiple stations throughout the vegan sector. The bureaucratic delays and protocol requirements that prevented them from receiving help resulted in the deaths of innocent men, women, and children who could have been saved. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as delegates referenced their own records of the incident. Ambassador Reyes waited for quiet before continuing. What followed was a series of technological failures affecting those who had been involved in the decision to deny aid. These failures were not the result of sabotage or deliberate action by Earth. They were the consequence of a phenomenon that our species was not even aware of at the time, a quantum entanglement between humans and their technology that persists beyond death. Elena activated the holographic projectors that had been set up around the hall. Complex three-dimensional models showed the quantum signatures that human technology carried, the bonds that formed between operators and their equipment, and the way those bonds could become hostile when severed traumatically. Human quantum signatures are significantly more persistent and emotionally imprinted than those of other known species, Reyes explained. When humans die under circumstances that our quantum echoes perceive as unjust or preventable, those echoes can cause systematic failures in the technology used by those responsible. The hall erupted in discussion as delegates absorbed the implications. Elena could see a mixture of shock, understanding, and, in some cases, relief on alien faces. Finally, they had an explanation for phenomena that had puzzled their governments for over a century. Commander Zara 9 stood to address the assembly. Ambassador Reyes, are you confirming that the incidents following the Kepler station tragedy were indeed caused by what you term quantum haunting? That is correct, Commander. Our scientists have documented over 200 similar incidents throughout galactic history where human deaths resulted in technological failures affecting those perceived as responsible. A delegate from the hegemony of worlds, a tall, crystalline being whose species communicated through harmonic vibrations, raised an appendage for recognition. When acknowledged, their translated words resonated through the hall. This explains much, but raises a critical question. Is Earth capable of controlling or weaponizing this phenomenon? Ambassador Reyes had anticipated this question, and Elena could see that her answer would be crucial to everything that followed. No, Reyes replied firmly. The quantum resonance phenomenon is not under conscious human control. It appears to be an automatic response triggered by traumatic death, particularly when that death is perceived as resulting from preventable injustice. We cannot deliberately activate it, nor can we direct it against specific targets. She paused, looking around the assembly. However, we can influence it indirectly by ensuring that humans are treated fairly and that preventable tragedies are avoided. This is why we have decided to reveal this information not as a threat, but as an explanation and a foundation for more honest relationships. Elena stood to address the assembly. For too long, humanity has benefited from privileges granted out of fear rather than respect. We believe that true cooperation between species must be built on understanding and mutual benefit, not on the threat of consequences that we cannot control but that others rightly fear. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates expressed relief at finally understanding the mystery that had shaped galactic policy for over a century. Others worried about the implications of sharing such sensitive information. But, gradually, a consensus began to emerge. The Altarian representative was among the first to speak in favor of the new transparency. For generations, my people have followed protocols that we did not fully understand. Now that we know the truth, we can work together to ensure that the tragedies that created these protocols never happen again. Similar statements came from delegates throughout the hall. What Elena found most encouraging was that many species seemed genuinely relieved to understand why they had been treating humans with such deference. The fear had been replaced by understanding, and understanding could be the foundation for genuine cooperation. As the session concluded, Ambassador Reyes announced Earth's new policy: humanity would no longer expect or demand the preferential treatment they had previously enjoyed. Instead, they would work within the same systems and protocols as every other species, while sharing their knowledge about quantum resonance to help prevent future incidents. We hope, Reyes concluded, that this marks the beginning of a new era in galactic relations, one based on mutual understanding rather than fear, on cooperation rather than privilege. Elena left the assembly hall feeling that humanity had taken its first real step toward becoming an equal member of the galactic community rather than a feared anomaly. The road ahead would be challenging, they would have to earn their place through merit rather than rely on the protection of quantum fear. But, for the first time since she had learned the truth about humanity's status in the galaxy, Elena felt that her species was finally ready to build relationships based on who they were rather than what they might unintentionally do to those who wronged them. The galaxy would never again need to fear the ghosts in human machines, because humanity had chosen transparency over advantage, understanding over fear.